everybody. I want to welcome you to our very first hybrid meeting. And two wonderful guests, Jim Morgan and Scott Ryder. Got the names right? You did.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Right, we have two guests.
Two guests, I got the names right. And they are visiting us from Parkinson's across America. And I'm not going to give you any bio material. I'm going to let them tell you about themselves. And but I do have two really quick questions that I want you to think about before you tell us about yourselves. Is first of all, how did you meet? Three questions, sorry. How did you meet? Who came up with this concept, or how did it happen? And how did you make this come to fruition? This is the last day that you're doing this? Last day of filming?
It is, this is our last day.
Wow. So tell me, let's start. I guess, Jim?
Well, first of all, I'm Jim Morgan. I'm 63 years old. I was diagnosed 16 years ago with Parkinson's disease. I'm a retired attorney. And I had TBS 2 years ago, which actually changed my life. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. Scott, you want to?
Sure, my name's Scott Ryder. I'm 62 years old. Like Tim, I've had Parkinson's for 16 years. Like most people, I realized I've had it long before that, and I've counted at least 7 years prior to that. I'm a retired financial advisor, and I'll let Jim tell you how we met.
We met by co-chairing the first annual Volunteer Leadership Summit for the Parkinson's Foundation. It was out here in Irvine, California. And I guess we did such a good job, or they couldn't find anybody else. They asked us to do the second annual Volunteer Leadership Summit, and that was in Fort Lauderdale. And we started talking, and Scott came up with this idea that wouldn't be fun to charter a tour bus and literally travel across the country and document the stories, the humorous, heartwarming, interesting stories about people living with Parkinson's disease and those who are making life better for them. You want to tell us how we kind of pulled it off a little bit?
Well, we were supposed to start pre-COVID, and we had made arrangements to travel in a motor coach, sort of the best way I could describe it, sort of like rock stars travel. That had sleepers in it. We contracted with 2 drivers. We were going to go 24 hours a day, and we were going to go 41 straight days. And then we were spared by COVID. When I say spared by COVID, because we both said that we don't know that we would have been married when we returned home after 41 straight days on the road. So COVID kind of stopped everything. And thankfully, we have some amazing sponsors that you can see on our website at pdacrossamerica.com. And they stuck with us the entire time. And so we launched back in June of this year with sort of a different approach. We go out on the road for 1 week, we film, then we go home and we recuperate, and we just barely recuperate. I will tell you all, it's been much more, for a person with Parkinson's, it's been much more physically demanding than I ever imagined. My exercise has decreased, my weight has gone up, really everything bad that could happen has happened. So I'm anxious to get home and return to what I would call a normal lifestyle.
Why don't you talk a little bit about where we've been?
So we were live on the news in Denver one day, and that was kind of a funny story itself. We were live being interviewed, but we didn't realize we were live being interviewed. So it was, made it interesting. But I used a phrase in that interview. I said, like the Johnny Cash song, "I've been everywhere, man." That's how I feel like I've been everywhere, man. But we started in June at the Villages in Florida. If you're not familiar with the Villages, it's the largest retirement community in the world. Interesting enough, they have nine Parkinson's support groups at the Villages. So that tells you a little bit about the prevalence of Parkinson's.
It's more than we have in Los Angeles County.
Think about that. That's incredible. Well, the Villages is a big place. From there, we traveled on to the University of Florida, and most of you will be familiar with the name Michael Oken, Dr. Michael Oken. If you haven't had the chance to read his latest book, I think I'll get this right, The Prescription for Ending Parkinson's Disease. It's my favorite book I've ever read about Parkinson's. But that was an amazing interview. He was very personable. He got out in our van and pretended like he was driving it. He made us do the Florida Gator Chomp. He's just really not only an amazing physician, but just an amazing individual. And then from there, we went on to Tennessee, where we attended the Parkinson's Foundation Volunteer Summit.
I cannot hear anything.
I live in South Carolina. But don't hate on me. I'm a Buckeye. I'm from.
Oh, well, in fact, that's reason to hate. We're
I'm aware of that. That's why I point that out, Sharon.
Yeah, well,
that's okay.
I won't tell you what my daughter did to the T-shirt her father-in-law sent her. He went to Ohio State.
He went to the Ohio State University.
Yeah, the Ohio State University.
So we from there we went to Hilton Head, South Carolina. Amazing story there that will make you wait to hear about. And we went to my hometown, my current town of Beaufort, South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina. From there we went to Columbus, Ohio, Indianapolis, Indiana. And it's amazing that I can remember this. And we went to Chicago, Illinois. In Chicago, we met up with Jimmy Choi and Bill Buckley, pretty well-known names in the Parkinson's community. And Jim Krager is an amazing guy. He's the guy that said, you have to meet the twitchy woman.
He has introduced me to more people. It was great.
Jim Krager is a matchmaker. Then we went back to Cleveland, Beechwood specifically, saw an amazing facility. Then our next stop was Denver, Colorado, Colorado Springs.
Oh, how do I turn on the volume?
Salt Lake City, and Colby, Kansas. And Colby, Kansas may be one of the most interesting stories we captured on the whole trip. It is in the middle of nowhere, but what Elaine has accomplished in Colby, Kansas is amazing. I always thought we should get Elaine and Rose from the villages together because they remind me a lot of each other, go-getters. And then this fifth segment, we've been in Los Angeles. I don't even remember where else. Las Vegas, Phoenix, and we were really scheduled to go 2 days ago. This very convincing lady said, please. She didn't say please. She said, I'd like to have you. She invited us, and we heard so many good things about you. She said, we got to go meet the twitchy woman.
Thank you.
What's the end game here, Scott? I mean, where do you?
So the end game, at the second Parkinson Foundation Volunteer Summit, we were introduced to a man named Barry Blaustein. Probably everybody here knows who he is. And we told him our idea about capturing this documentary. He said, you capture it, I'll help you market it to a streaming service. So our hope is we're going to sell it to a streaming service, and 100% of the proceeds are going to be donated to the Parkinson's Foundation.
We really kind of hooked our start to the Parkinson's Foundation because, like there are tremendous organizations out there that are dealing and serving people with Parkinson's, but we really resonate with the Parkinson's Foundation's mission to make life better for people today. Scott and I feel like in our lifetime, we're probably realistically thinking that we're not going to see a cure. But every day, we're meeting people like Sharon and others that we'll talk about for changing lives, making life better. Parkinson's can really be such an isolating, issue that if people only knew that there are resources out there like the Parkinson's Foundation, that their lives can be dramatically better. And we're out here to encourage each other and encourage those people to come out and talk about their diagnosis.
I was diagnosed probably 3 years after the two of you. I was diagnosed 13, 14 years ago. And there was nothing out there at the time. I'm sure you remember those two. I mean, there was like one organization, Fox Foundation was it. There was nothing. And when you look today to see the plethora, how the community has grown and how all of just the information is available to all of us, it's really amazing.
It is. Yeah. It's all free. I mean, it's there
free.
for the asking. People that are out there suffering for needlessly, if the only, whatever the barrier is, whether it's stigma or whether it's resources or access, if they would only go out and reach out or even ask somebody, the resources are there. So.
Well, that's one of the reasons we started a mentoring program through Twitchy Woman, was because of the pandemic, people were so isolated and they were asking for help. I mean, I was getting phone calls from people who they call me and they say, I was diagnosed an hour ago. I found you on the internet. It's like, wow, when I was diagnosed, there was no way to find anybody on the internet. But they need help. And how do you cope with this? And so we started a mentoring program. We have an amazing team of women, 6 women on the team who go through applications. We have women who volunteer to be mentors, and they're paired with people who are requesting mentors. And it's amazing, and it's been very successful.
That's awesome.
You have to kind of go with the flow. What's needed at the time. The pandemic changed everything.
It did. I mean, so many things were, obviously for the worse, but a lot for the better with the development of the Zoom technology, the ability to reach out to people that were otherwise homebound or Or
If
not
this had
inclined
happened
to.
without Zoom, I don't know where we'd be today.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sure, and one thing I've said about the pandemic is being in a small town in Beaufort, South Carolina, with a population of about 13,000 people. When I first moved there, resources weren't readily available for Parkinson's. Long story short, 5 years later, we have a lot of resources, but one of the things we have is a support group, and Zoom allowed us to have really what I would call high-profile guests that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
Exactly.
So there, it's sort of, I wouldn't want COVID. I hope COVID goes away, but it has taught us some things that I don't think we would have learned otherwise.
Absolutely. When I started this in response to COVID, I thought we'll be doing this twice a month for about 2 months, 3 months, and we'll stop. Well, here we are, almost 3 years later. March will be 3 years, and we're still going strong. And speakers are coming to us saying, "We want to speak to your group," because they know that they will get heard.
Well, thank you so much for that, for this opportunity in particular. We were sitting around this morning and thinking it would be fun to kind of tally our numbers and stats. And
Oh, that would be great.
if you're interested, we can share that with you. We've raised almost $200,000. We're at $194,156 so far just to produce this. And as Scott said, we hope to sell it to Netflix, a documentary, or some other streaming service, and raise significantly more money by doing that. And we have committed that 100% of those proceeds go to the Parkinson Foundation. We've driven fan miles, I call them, 7,953. And if you add to it the air miles that each of us have shared, that's probably 4 times that amount. But that's back and forth across the country at least 3 times, which is pretty remarkable. It feels like we've done that many, many times already, doesn't it? But we've interviewed more than 350 people. Just incredible interviews that we've experienced. We had the opportunity to interview some of the most renowned practitioners in the Parkinson's field. We've visited 12 of the integrated health facilities, 7 of which are centers of excellence that have been designated as such by the Parkinson's Foundation. And as Scott mentioned, we were at the University of Florida. We've been at the Medical University of South Carolina, the Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health in Las Vegas, the Muhammad Ali Parkinson Center in Phoenix, Northwestern University, and Duke were the centers of excellence that we've visited. We've appeared in the local media in several markets, including Channel 4 in Charleston. We were on the evening news there, Channel 10 in Columbus. Incredible interview with Scott. I think you can find that online. It's on our website. We did a radio interview, a live radio interview in Chicago at Northwestern. Channel 9 in Denver, that was our surprise that was live. We sat down in the chair and we were
Chatting away.
instantly in shock. And we did live radio. Scott did a live radio interview in Colby, Kansas, which turned out to be a really nice opportunity for us. We participated in live webinars in Boulder, Colorado, that was sponsored by the Boulder Community Health Foundation, at Boston Scientific, and I'll talk a little bit about Boston Scientific in just a minute. We also spoke at the Volunteer Leadership Summit, the Parkinson's Foundation. And of course, we're here this morning with you. We've really interviewed people from all walks of life, and with interesting connections to Parkinson's disease. And some of them famous, some of them not. We met Brent Peterson from Parkinson's Foundation. He was a national hockey player. We met Craig Taylor, who was a basketball star at The Ohio State. And we recently met Ray Ellis, who was recently diagnosed. He played in the NFL with the Eagles
In the Browns.
But we've also met a lot of ordinary people. We met some incredible guys that are part of the first African American cancer support group. And the issues that are there are so different, but yet so similar to what we all know, but incredibly heartwarming. And we know that there's a cultural component to that we have to be sure that we address.
So Jim, I'm just going to add one thing that we really try to instill in everything we do. Whatever we do, we try to keep two words in the back of our mind: hope and encouragement. So we really sought out hope and encouragement. We met a husband and wife that both have Parkinson's disease. Imagine, and they have a pretty darn good attitude. Just the other day, we met a young lady who was diagnosed recently, and she just lost her mother less than a year ago. Her mother had Parkinson's disease. So there was sadness, but you mentioned earlier, Sharon, and the docs, the movement disorder physicians we talked to told us this time and time again. They said treating people with Parkinson's is really special because they said they're unusual in a good way. They have a fight and a positive attitude like no other group of people they've ever been kind of associated with in the health community. And they said what's special about it also is that they feel like they become part of their family and it's a lifetime relationship, not a one-time relationship. And so you were talking earlier about people with Parkinson's. Sometimes I think maybe I'm delusional, but I don't believe I am. It's a special group of people. Yeah. Really, I wish I didn't have Parkinson's. Jim used to say he wouldn't take it away if he could. I bought that line for about a month, and I thought, no, if I could get rid of it, I could. But what Jim does say that we agree upon is that had it not been for Parkinson's, there's a lot of amazing relationships and people we would have never met otherwise.
Exactly. I met Jim in Chicago because I was looking for
Jim Krager
to go to. I was looking for boxing class to go to when I was visiting my daughter, and he happened to be literally like one subway stop away from where she lived. So I went, and we became good friends, and he started introducing me to everybody. And because of him, I had Jimmy Choi in my backyard on a week's notice.
You all know who Jimmy Choi is? Jimmy Choi.
The American Ninja Warrior.
For 5 seasons, he has Parkinson's. He's on American Ninja Warrior.
Amazing.
Probably outside of Michael J. Fox, I'd argue he's probably the best well-known in the Parkinson's community. He's catching up with the two of us, Jim.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, the three of us.
That's
the
right.
Three of us. Well, we don't know if we can catch the twitchy one.
Oh, well, I got to get on my broomstick and fly away. Yes. I have that going. It's my superpower, my broomstick.
Jim, a couple stories come to mind of people. You want me to take the first one?
Yeah, go ahead.
An interesting story, and it's just one of those things that just was meant to be. So Taylor, our videographer, Chris, our videographer, myself are loaded in the van, heading towards Columbus, Ohio. And I don't know if you can relate to this. I got an hour and a half down the road, and I realized I forgot my medicine. And if you know anything about Parkinson's, you don't leave home without your medicine. So I called my wife, and of course she wasn't surprised that I forgot my medicine. But a neighbor was kind enough to get in his car, and he headed towards us, we headed towards him. But the point of the story is we stopped to fuel up with gas. And by the way, our single largest fuel tab so far has been in the state of California.
Of course.
I think $130 to fill up one time. Yeah. But we stopped at a gas station, and we went inside, and we wanted to partake in some fine dining, and there was a sub sandwich shop in there because we were in a hurry. And there was one man working behind the counter. He was slower than molasses, as I say down in the South. And I'm not going to kid you, I was feeling somewhat impatient because we were already behind. I started to think to myself, what is this guy's problem? Come on, man, pick it up. And then I got halfway down the line to the vegetables, and I thought, Scott Ryder, that's not a good attitude. So I said a little prayer for a good attitude. So I started asking him about his day. By the time we got to the cookies right by the cash register, he said, I like you. I'm going to give you 4 cookies. I said, I'll take those 4 cookies. And I don't know why, but when I was paying, I said, hey, man, do you know anything about Parkinson's? And there was a silence, and a tear came down his cheek. He said, do I know anything about Parkinson's? So I was just recently diagnosed with Parkinson's. He was a young guy in his 40s. And in a matter of minutes, he was away from the counter. His colleague had finally come in to take over. He was out by us in the gas pump by the van that the people that are here present in person saw when we walked in, and put on one of our Parkinson's Across America shirts, signed a waiver, and told his story. But here was the most amazing thing. He did not know what a movement disorder specialist was. And we know only 9% of people with Parkinson's see a movement disorder specialist. A terrible shortage. He didn't know anything about the value or importance of exercise or support group. He didn't know about the PD generation test. He didn't know about the wear care kit. All things that we were able to bring in his life that he never would have known otherwise. And I said to the camera crew right then and there, I said, if we stop right now, if we're done, if this trip is over right now, I feel good because we've impacted one life. But I think that we've been impacted greatly, but I know, Jim, you have a special story there.
Tremendous story. We went out to Boston Scientific in Valencia, California. When we first started this past week, and they invited us to speak to all of their engineers and all their employees.
Can I just interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
So for those that don't, maybe not familiar with the significance of that, there's a common procedure called DBS, deep brain stimulation surgery. There's 3 companies that make the devices, and Boston Scientific is one of those 3, and they're one of our sponsors. And we thank Boston Scientific for stepping up and helping us. I just want people to know the significance of Boston Scientific.
That's right. But we felt that, I mean, we wanted to express the gratitude that we've felt all across the country. I mean, people with Parkinson's are just, we'll ask, what gives you hope and encouragement? And so many people say, person after person will say, I get up every day, or I struggle to get up, but I'm grateful for the people that go to work every day to make my life better. And they really realized that. We wanted to communicate that message back to the people that were at Boston Scientific that create these devices that have so dramatically changed my life. And at the end of that, they surprised me with a framed picture, and they had looked up the serial numbers for the leads and the device that I have in my chest, and put a picture together of all the people in Puerto Rico and in Ireland who had contributed to the development of my particular device. And I just thought that was special. I mean, it was very touching to have that.
It's amazing. So for Jim to be able to look at the faces of the people that created this thing that's way down in his brain, that if we would have sat here 3 years ago, Jim would have been, the movement was just, the dyskinesia was off the chart.
I can make myself seasick sitting there.
That's what I say.
Yeah.
I feel that way too. I sway in the mornings usually, and my husband was in there. I'm making myself seasick.
It is, and it
It
only
really-
gets worse because as you take more
Oh,
and more.
don't tell me that, please.
Well, but you got to be aware of it
I know.
because then you know what the
Well,
remedy is.
let me clarify. How many times have we heard the expression Parkinson's is a snowflake disease?
Yeah.
So it
That's
may
true.
not get worse for you, Sharon. You may be as seasick as you're going to ever get right now. It's
I hope
different for
that's as
everybody.
seasick as I get.
But I will tell all of you that to have the opportunity to sit in front of the employees from Boston Scientific, we're talking HR, accounting, maintenance people that don't really think about the end game always, and tell them thank you because they all contribute to the making of the device that changed my good friend's life, but thousands and thousands of other people's lives. And we were able to present to the employees there in person. And it was truly heartwarming and touching because they came up to us afterwards and they thanked us. And that was really
Every one of them, they really did.
special. So Sharon, what else would you like to talk about?
Were either of you at the World Parkinson's Congress in Portland?
Portland. No.
No.
Not.
Okay. There's one thing that I've never forgotten. Great late Tom Isaacs was a speaker, and he said that they always say that the cure for Parkinson's is 5 years away. Now, we're 14 years, 16 years, and we've been hearing this for a long time. But he says, but what they don't tell you is that in 5 years, they're going to tell you it's another 5 years away. And then it's another 5 years. So it's always a moving target. We're never going to get that cure. But I feel like we're getting closer. Maybe it's 4 years.
I think with PD generation, I think that they're really starting to zero in on causes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's where the breakthrough is going to be. I mean, what do you think, Scott?
Is everybody here familiar with PD generation? I see a couple heads, mostly no. So PD generation is a program sponsored by the Parkinson's Foundation, and it's genetic testing. If you're going to go do it on your own, it would cost $2,300. This is not that retail one that you buy at the drugstore online. This is a real heavy duty, I call it, I'm using my own term, genetic testing. So you have to have Parkinson's to qualify for it. I've done it. Jim has done it. Sharon's done it. As a matter of fact, on this journey, we met with one of the genetic counselors that talks to people that do PD generation. How it works is you sign up for it. You call the Parkinson's Foundation at their 1-800-HELP number, and they send you a kit free of charge via FedEx and a FedEx return kit. 3 small tubes, 3 swabs, and you do 3 cheek swabs. You put it in the tube, you return it at no cost. Before that, you will have met with the genetic counselor, and we'll post all this on our website, and I bet Sharon will too afterwards. Because I see people writing it down. I know people at home are probably writing it down. So don't feel rushed to write it down. But what it does is and I'm not going to say this right, I'm not a medical doctor, I don't need to tell you that, but it tests 7 genes for what I'm going to call variants, or make sure those genes are all in order. And the information is stored then for the future. So there's a couple things. Number one, it's contributing to the effort to find a cure today. Number two, because that information is banked, it could be beneficial, and that will be beneficial in the future. And so they're trying to do the largest sampling ever done. When you think about it, it's a $2,300 test that costs absolutely nothing. I get kind of excited about it. I want to encourage everybody watching and everybody here in person. If you know anybody has Parkinson's, have them do that genetic testing. And I'm proud to tell you that in the state of North Carolina and South Carolina, we've done more PD generation testing than any state in the United States, including California, New York, or even Florida, Jim. Because we're out there, we're talking about it all the time. So that's what Jim is referring to about PD generation. And I will also say, Jim, I think this trip has given me hope and encouragement about a cure, because some of the things we've seen at the Medical University of South Carolina, we got to visit a lab where they were doing active testing. And I won't say this right, but there was a stroke victim there, a young lady who was an opera singer from New York City. And they were hooked a device to her earlobe, real electrical impulses through there, and you should see how her handwriting had improved in just 2 weeks. And they think there's going to be a relationship that's going to cross over into the Parkinson's world. So there's a lot of great things going on that I didn't know about. Sometimes I feel negative when I say I don't think they're going to find a cure in my lifetime. I feel like I'm Debbie Downer, and I hope I'm wrong. But more than ever, I feel like there's that possibility. There's so many great things going on that we've learned about on this journey across America.
Yeah, I took the test. My cousin also has Parkinson's, and they really wanted to see if there was any relationship. Neither of us had a genetic component, which was too bad. I mean, we were really hoping to find a genetic component so they could figure out how, if that was what caused it for both of us.
So we get asked all the time what causes Parkinson's, and I know if you're sitting here, you probably wonder why you have Parkinson's. I know I do. After reading Dr. Open's book, I'm more convinced than ever it's environmental, but I think there's a genetic component as well. And the best way I could describe that, if I had a twin sitting right here, I think it's possible my twin could have been exposed to the same environmental conditions that caused me to have Parkinson's. My twin may not have that because their genetic composition might be slightly different in some way. But I think about, I grew up out in the country for part of my life, and we drank well water. I used to run behind the mosquito truck.
We did too.
Sure, and I knew we had something.
Yeah, I grew up in St. Louis. We ride our bikes behind the
Yeah,
mosquitoes.
so I don't know. I mean, you start thinking about it, but I do know in parts of California where there's migrant workers, there's a high rate of Parkinson's.
Yeah.
So
Central Valley.
there's just no doubt that the environment plays a large role. As a matter of fact, China has the fastest growth rate of Parkinson's of any country in the world. And China's sort of undergoing what we call an industrial revolution. But here's what's shocking. There are 7, and I don't know what else to call them, but things in China that are outlawed in China that are known to cause Parkinson's that are legal here in the United States.
One of them is Paraquat.
Paraquat, there's a dry cleaning solution. I wore a suit and tie for years. So all those things make you wonder. But my thought is kind of, I think we really have to lean on Washington, D.C. to have the guts to not always listen to the lobbyists. I'm getting political, Jim's going to get after me afterwards. But it's just, if we know there's things that cause Parkinson's and we don't do anything about it, that's just irresponsible.
Did you speak to any of the Camp Lejeune people?
I did not, but I do know about Camp Lejeune. My oldest daughter is a psychologist in the VA, so she sees people with Parkinson's. And Camp
One of our
Lejeune
women is very active in that.
there's a lot of problems that are raising stillbirths and everything else. Hey, Sharon, I have a question for you.
Yes.
How did you come up with the name Twitchy Woman?
Well, we have an argument in my house as to who came up with it. My husband, who is the king of bestowing nicknames on everyone. And every friend of our children had a nickname where they were not allowed in the house. But I told him this was mine. He says, no, it wasn't. He says, you couldn't have come up with this. Yeah, I did. Obviously, the song Witchy Woman became
Right.
Twitchy Woman.
Witchy Woman.
Yeah.
I always like that show Bewitched when I was a kid, so
Yeah.
I feel very comfortable next to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I have my witch's hat that I wear every Halloween. It's actually on the table
It's
out
on the
there.
table.
Yeah, a lot of they've seen me. My women, they've seen me because I wear it occasionally when I'm online, just for fun.
Speaking of your table back there, I'm going to be sort of bold, but before you all leave, I'd like to show you a couple things. And I know we want to leave time for questions and answers.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're doing on time, but
Let's. Do you want to have more? Do you want to have people here ask some questions?
I do. I'd like to share a couple things, and maybe you could look at the notes and make sure we didn't miss anything.
And Ashley, can you check to see if we have any?
Back on the table, and for those of you watching from home, there's two things, I want to share with you. And they're two of our sponsors. You could call this an advertisement, but it's an advertisement from the heart. Parkinson's makes life pretty challenging just to begin with in a lot of ways. My record for losing my house keys is 7 times in one day. I'm not proud of that record, and I hope I don't break it. But tying shoes have always been an issue for me. And I won't go into the details, but we came across a company that we would call them like family now, called Kizik, K-I-Z-I-K. We've been to their headquarters. They're hands-free shoes. There's a patent, Mike Pratt, who created the patent for Kizik shoes. It's an amazing, kind person. Monty Deer is the CEO. They're so supportive of us. And we have discount cards for Kizik shoes. And we'll show you a demonstration. That it's so crazy. I don't tie my shoestrings anymore. They just pop on. So easy. Maybe Taylor, maybe you could come up here real quick and show us how they pop on.
Right. Let's take them off. They got spring technology back there. Pop them just like that.
So you don't bend over. And you know what? They were never intended in the what I'm going to call the adaptive world. If you watch their marketing, it's pregnant moms, kids. They're amazing. And then there's a lady named Maura Horton who has a special place in our heart. Her husband Don had Parkinson's. He was a well-known collegiate football coach at the Division I level. And it involves Russell Wilson. You guys know who Russell Wilson is. We brought his name up in a couple parts of the country, and it was not well received because he now plays for Denver. But Russell Wilson, as a collegiate athlete, was in the locker room with Maura's husband, Don. They were the last 2 people in the locker room, and Don couldn't get his shirt buttoned. It was like me, he had a tremor and he was shaking. And they almost missed the team bus, and so Russell went to Maura Horton and said, Coach needs help with his shirt. So she developed a brand of shirts, which we brought one to show you, called Magna Red. If you haven't seen it, they're made for men and women. There's no buttoning. It's amazing. They're magnetic. So those are 2 of our many sponsors, and they're special people. We're grateful for their help and support along the way. And it's been nice to know them personally, because it's more than just a corporate deal. These are people that really want to make a difference.
Should we open up questions?
We'll answer any
Any
questions.
questions from nobody? Oh, Farrell?
What was the story behind Camp Lejeune?
Oh, can't be sure. It's really complicated to go into right now. There was a lot of TCE, I think it's the dry cleaning fluid,
The way I describe
dumped in the groundwater.
poisoned groundwater in the simplest term. Groundwater, it's unhealthy. It causes a lot of stillbirths. A lot of people have been there and come out later with Parkinson's and other challenges. And I think it's still open.
Yeah.
It's very much
Yeah, it's
still
been
up there.
actually it's been in the news a lot the last week or so.
It's one of those things that's like, God, how can this be?
Trent?
It's curious. Things you haven't mentioned. It's Dr. Lincoln for doing this tour. What would each of you your 3 biggest takeaways? Your kind of ahas.
So we should repeat the question.
Okay, can you
We'll repeat it.
Yeah, Trent asked us what our biggest takeaways from this whole experience has been. I guess all 3 of them.
go ahead.
Well, you're letting me go first, so you can come up with your 3. Thanks. My biggest takeaways have been we live in the greatest country on this earth. I know that may not probably be popular to say in some places, but the people we've come across, I was at a gas station. I was at a gas station pump, and I turned around and I saw a guy wearing a shirt, and you'll all be too young to recognize this thing. There's a picture, it said Johnny Bench on it. I turned around to this guy and said, Johnny Bench. He was an all-star catcher for the Cincinnati Reds back in the 70s. This guy said, how do you know about Johnny Bench? And long story short, I'll cut through the chase. I said, where are you from? He said, oh, you've never heard of it. It's a little town called Zanesville, Ohio. I said, do you mean the home of the Y Bridge, Con's Potato Chips, and Tom's Ice Cream Bowl? And I thought this guy was going to have a heart attack. But the crazy thing is, he then peeked around the corner and saw the van, and he said, I was just diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Oh, wow.
Very similar to the story I told earlier. He didn't know about exercise, PD generation, anything. And people have been so kind to us. People honk their horns at us as we've gone down the street. So my first takeaway is we live in a great country. Number two, it's now confirmed that Parkinson's are people with Parkinson's, PWPs, are amongst the most resilient yet positive people on this earth. And sometimes we don't show it because I teach Jim, I said, smile. I said, swing your arm and smile. We have this thing, if we're walking and one of us drags our legs, we hit each other in the arm, you know. And I said, now try to walk right and smile. And sometimes I think our masked look doesn't indicate who we really are on the inside. But I think people with Parkinson's are tough. They're fighters. And I can't think of another group, maybe it exists, where people band together for the common cause and the good to try to make a difference. I mean, here we are, this twitchy woman lady who I've never met in my life, are sitting in her backyard in Beverly Hills, California. That's amazing. No, it is. It's so gracious and kind. So I only have two takeaways because I can't think of a third.
Well, I think it was one each,
When he-
which you took mine.
But
I thought you wanted three from each of us. Let me give you number three.
That was great. That was great. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I would just echo what Scott said about the resilience of people in the Parkinson community. People are so enthusiastic about living their best life today, and it really makes a difference in the way they enjoy life. They struggle, but it matters, and that really has resonated with me.
I guess I should share one other thing with you. My wife would say, don't act like you haven't had fun on this trip. It has been tiring and exhausting. We've had some fun times, and I need to preface this by telling you that Jim, I'm not exaggerating, is the top attorney in probably the world in this particular area of the space called renewable energy. I call Jim Winston Churchill. Me, on the other hand, I barely graduated from The Ohio State University, and I'm not going to kid you, my main purpose of going to college was to be able to run track, which was my passion. And I was like Larry the Cable Guy. So I've caused Jim great embarrassment on this trip. But we have fun. We were at a toll booth on the Turnpike in Cleveland. We hatched this idea, unbeknownst to Jim. So he gets up to the toll booth, and all of us, there was 3 cameramen that day and myself, we acted like we were in a fight. We started throwing bags of potato chips at Jim. We were shouting and yelling. And this toll booth lady looked at Jim and said, sir,
Do you need help?
she said, do you need help? And some of you aren't smiling, but you had to be there. It was funny. And then just the other day, we were at LAX, and I don't know what prompted. I rolled my window down. There's a big crowd of people standing there, and I said, Bob, hey, Bob, how you doing? And all these people started saying, hey, I'm doing good. Hi. So we have fun along the way, and it's been good. It reminded me of my track trips as a student athlete. It's been useful in some ways, except my body hasn't felt useful.
Well,
My takeaway from all of this is that I've met the most amazing people that I never would have had the opportunity to meet. And it doesn't matter where we go in the world, there's somebody that I can call and say hello to and meet with. And it really is amazing.
Would you say that as much as you feel like you give, you get so much more in return?
Absolutely.
That's really what we feel.
Absolutely. And if you would see some of the publicity these guys put out about me, I'm like, huh? Who are they talking about? It's not me. But it's been fun. My husband looks at it and he's just like, he's just amazed. You know, it's like this. Twitchy Woman has taken on a life of itself. It's no longer me. It's something totally
It's an entity of its own.
It's an entity of its own. And it really is amazing. And we formed just amazing friendships through it. most of the people here who have come because they know me. We got to meet. I was telling Andrea earlier. One of our women in Orange County, who you may or may not be aware of, Lauren Simmons, who runs PD Buzz. We got together one day. It was down in Orange County, and we got together for coffee. And all of a sudden, it was 2 hours later. We just were having the best. It was like we were old friends who had gotten together again after a long absence. We had so much to say and so much in common because we have Parkinson's, and there were no barriers. We have a great time. We have a lot of fun together. And even the boxing classes that I used to go to, where half the time I was the only woman in the class, it was blessed. You know?
And it's such an opportunity to hold each other accountable and hold each other up.
Yeah.
And like I say, I mean, there's so many, for every person that we have in those groups, there's so many more people out there that we need to reach. We have to constantly be thinking about their needs because we can make such a difference in their life.
And if you see somebody walking hobble into the room for an exercise class, and they walk out standing straight, smile on their face, you know,
It's done well.
it's done well, and we all feel it, and we feel for them. We understand each other.
I think one important point to know we haven't really touched on that we both felt a bit of conviction during this trip is the underserved. I think we have a big challenge in this country. There's lots of people that live down. I live in South Carolina, and there literally are dirt roads. And there's somebody that lives down those dirt roads that has a shake and doesn't really understand what that tremor is about. And there's large pockets of people in the United States of America that aren't getting the proper treatment or care. And we have to find a way to reach those people.
Did you know that Montana just got its first movement disorder specialist for the entire state?
I'm impressed that they have one, seriously.
Yeah, somebody just started their investment.
When we were at the Muhammad Ali Center in Las Vegas, and that was Zoltan, Dr. Mari. Lou Ruva, Muhammad Ali Center. Maybe we can edit that out. But, we talked extensively about the shortage of movement disorder specialists. Mm-hmm. It's a huge problem.
Dr. Mari has a real passion for telemedicine and the ability to reach out and serve that whole community that has either they're homebound or no physical way to get to a clinic, or the distance is so great. And I think we're making tremendous gains in that regard as well.
I know, gentlemen, we were at the University of Colorado, and this is my Parkinson's. I honestly don't remember the physician's name. She was brilliant. She's working really hard to reach the Native American community. It's not easy to penetrate, but if you just find one person in that community, then kind of use that as a stepping stone. I wonder if we have questions from people at home.
One question is they'd like to know
I want
when and where will the documentary be released?
We're thinking probably in mid to early spring or summer next year.
I would argue a little later than that.
As our videographer back there shutters.
Editing is going to be a huge undertaking, but we're going to break it up into 5 segments. And we can't say exactly where it will be released because that will be the negotiating part. So if I just saw a lady wave her hand right here, so I think she has an idea. And she was swatting about it. I'm kidding. I heard an interesting idea the other day from Jim. This will be Larry the Cable Guy versus Winston Churchill. There's a drive-in movie theater where I live. Wouldn't that be cool to have it on drive-in theaters all across the nation? Except I don't think
there's none left around here.
But our ultimate goal is to market it to a streaming service and have it be in 5 segments. And I think maybe our bloopers reel is going to be maybe the best part of it.
That's really fun.
I had that question at the time, so that would be a question.
We want. That's it. No questions? Anybody else?
This is Elaine.
Aside from remembering your medicine, what was the biggest challenge in doing this tour?
Probably the distance, just making the drive.
let me repeat the
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry.
Aside from remembering your medicine, which we all forget, what was your biggest challenge?
Well, two old guys with Parkinson's traveling, as challenging as it is, you just multiply that by long days and long distances. And it's been quite a challenge, at least for me in that regard.
For me, it would be two things. I'm typically a pretty darn disciplined person in life. And it's like discipline went out the door when it came to exercise. And what I ate the other night, I haven't released shared this with anybody. But one of our crew members' nickname is the Walrus. And we snuck out kind of late at night and had a double scoop of ice cream. And it's called the kitchen sink. Had everything on it. Then I went back to my room and I ate 2 Hostess cupcakes and a small thing of cookies. And
They still make Hostess
they
cupcakes?
do. And I felt guilty. I mean,
You
should.
thank you for that encouragement, Richie.
Oh my God.
But it's easier to eat poor when you're on the road than it is to eat well. Let me say it takes more effort to eat well. So, and all that's contributed. I'll just be straight. I feel like I'm at the worst place with my Parkinson's, and I've been in 16 years. And before this trip, I wasn't that way. But I'm confident I'll get it back. I'm a bicyclist, so I got to get home and get on the bicycle and eat proper. And I'll be back.
I'm just curious, since you've been to a lot of the research facilities too, did you encounter anything on virtual reality in the research side and on the remote side through the pandemic to find Zoom become an effective tool?
The question was, did you come across any research on virtual reality, Parkinson's, and the effect of Zoom
Yeah, to reach people in remote areas.
to reach?
Reach that.
To reach people.
I'll take the first part of that question.
Good.
Well, we were at Boston Scientific, and they put us in these holographic goggles that allowed us to see 3D dimensional depiction of my brain in the middle of the room. And then they peeled it apart, and they showed exactly how their leads and devices work. What this is exemplary of is what they call image-guided programming. It used to be that they put in the leads, and really it was like they called it playing Battleship. They tried different settings, different stimulations, and really to see if something worked. It was trial and error. Now, with this image-guided technology, they can pinpoint the location of where the subthalamic nucleus is, the part of the brain they're looking to reach is stimulated with such precision, and they can see where the lead is in the core, just outside of the core, or not in it altogether. And then they can see, without getting into technology that I couldn't begin to describe, but they can see how it stimulates the right and the wrong fibers in your brain. And so all of the side effects that could be caused by deep brain stimulation can be avoided very early on. In my case, I had it 2 years ago, and it's literally taken about 2 years to program to a point where I can function the way I am today. And this makes that technology so beneficial, so much more powerful, bringing that therapy to people that have had deep brain stimulation. I'm going to answer the question about telemedicine.
Yeah, this is just my observation. It may not be correct, but on telemedicine, I think because of COVID, I think that there is more confidence than ever that it actually can work pretty darn well with people with Parkinson's. I can't remember the initials that go with the test, what's that called? The PRDQ, ABC, right? UPRDS. Twitchy woman's got it.
I don't know.
But I think that some of the physicians we talked to said they felt very confident that they could really do as well administering that test via Zoom as they could in person. So that has all sorts of implications, which are really positive. You talk about reaching the underserved. You could have a clinic set up in the middle of Idaho, or you could do it from somebody's home. You wouldn't even have to have a clinic. So that was encouraging.
Well, and that whole concept has been translated into DBS. So there's one of the developers has the technology of programming somebody remotely. And again, if you've got somebody who's had DBS that's out in Colby, Kansas, it's nowhere near to, a center of excellence or a trained programmer. They can via telemedicine, program and synchronize the device in ways that we could never do before.
Another advantage is, in talking to my doctor, she said she can see people in their home environment, which they don't see normally. So she can ask, she can ask you to move around, see your home, see what obstacles are in your way. It really helps them to see us more as a whole person.
Another interesting story, I don't know that relates so much to telemedicine, but I just thought it was, we were at the, where were we, Jim? When they did sleep DBS.
At Muhammad Ali.
The Muhammad Ali Center, which is in Phoenix, Arizona. I did get that right. And we met with one of the top neurosurgeons, really, probably in the world, Dr. Ponce. And, the thought of DBS for so many people is just more than they can tolerate, thinking about drilling 2 holes through your skull while you're awake. But he's doing many, many procedures while the patient is asleep and having great success with it. So we talked about hope and encouragement. That was encouraging.
I think we will wrap it up here. I want to thank both of you for coming and joining us today. This has been wonderful. It's so nice meeting you, both of you. And I'm sure we will see each other in Barcelona.
Hope so. And we'd like to thank you for all that you do for the partners.
Absolutely.
And thank you to everybody who joined us in person today. It's so nice to see people here. I love it. And I hope it worked for everybody who's out there in Zoom land. I know we have people from Europe who join us. We have some from New Zealand who usually watch us on tape because it's just time just doesn't work. I shouldn't say tape, but watch recording. I'm older than both of you, so.
But Sharon, before we part ways, I have one last question for you. Do you have a website?
Of course, twitchywoman.com.
What can people do on that website?
On the website, they can apply for a mentor. They can watch all of our past programs that have been on Zoom. We recorded most of them. A couple have not been recorded for various reasons, but most of our past programs are there in the library. It's under Sunday Mornings with Twitchy Woman. And you can find all my past blog posts too.
What if they wanted to wear a good-looking shirt?
Oh, well, they can talk to me. We just finished our t-shirt sale. It's over, but I have a couple of larges over here at the table if anybody wants one. But if enough people are interested, we will certainly order more t-shirts. But t-shirts, zip-up hoodies, and tank tops for working out. And nothing else at this point.
You met a lot of our new friends today that maybe hadn't known you before.
Exactly.
And for the person that asked about when we were going to have our documentary ready to go, follow us on Facebook. We probably do the best job of keeping Facebook updated. We do have a website, pdacrossamerica.com, Twitter, and Instagram. And we'll keep you updated.
You're on TikTok?
We're not on TikTok.
I spoke to somebody yesterday, a young woman who you may have to draft to be a Twitchy woman who has 72,000 followers on TikTok.
It's a lot.
And she started her TikTok, whatever you call it, because she was diagnosed with Parkinson's and she wanted to increase awareness. And 72,000, I didn't think there was 72,000 of us who understood TikTok.
The last thing I would say on behalf of Jim and myself is that our travel, it's ended today in your backyard here in Beverly Hills.
Thank you.
But our journey is really just beginning. And we have some amazing videography, some amazing stories, and we'll be putting little teasers out along the way.
And I'll share them with everybody.
Keep up with us, because I would say the best is yet to come.
Great.
Well, thank you both.
Thank you very much for having us.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
And with that, we are going to show a couple of slides, just upcoming things. First slide, that's today. So, next slide. Scholarships are available for the World Parkinson's Congress for women who are first-time attendees. It covers the $400 registration fee. If you are interested, contact me. Just email me or email twitchywomannwpc@gmail.com, and you will get all the information about the scholarships. The World Parkinson's Congress will be held in Barcelona next July. And if it's anything like the past two that I've attended, you're going to love it. It is an amazing, fabulous experience. And you'll meet lots of new friends that you will cherish forever. Next slide. And I'm going to be out of town the next two meetings. I'm going to be cruising. I'm actually going to Barcelona next week. And then we're heading out on a cruise. So I have two women who have volunteered to stand in for me, and I want to thank them. Susan Lehman will be next up on October 30th, and she will be interviewing Stacy Macaluso, who has been with us before. And Stacy is an exercise specialist. She runs Mission PD, but she also wants to talk about the National Plan to End Parkinson's Act and how you can get involved in that and write to your congresspeople. And then 2 weeks later, Kat Hill and Nancy Peake will be speaking about their new book, Being Well with Chronic Illness. And both of them are fellow people with Parkinson's, and they have collaborated on this book, which I think you will enjoy. And then I think we have another one scheduled after that, but I can't remember who it was. So we have our open mic chat every Tuesday morning with Stacy. Shelley Savoy, not Stacy. And then Twitchies Without Partners, and I apologize to anybody who tried to log on this morning with all of this going on. I got on too late and we didn't have it. So there will be a meeting again in 2 weeks. And I think that's it.